A venture lab is typically the place that this gets done.
Yeah.
I was very lucky. No, that's not true. It took me 14 years to get a job at the Xerox Palo Alto Research Labs. I knew I wanted to work there when I was 12, and I swear I called them every year for 14 years. And I finally got the job. And the reason why is because I knew that R&D labs are the places where the real breakthroughs happen. And if you're not working with R&D labs or universities, if you're not taking risks to bring those things into your organization, and you're waiting until everybody else sorts of does it, then you're an also-ran. And also-rans aren't going to cut it. So if you're trying the things that nobody else is trying, then you know you're succeeding. This is a very American thing, and I want to make sure that I say this very carefully here. My family's Italian. I grew up between two worlds. I've lived in 11 cities in 4 countries. I'm lucky that I've seen the things that I've seen, and what I've consistently seen is the risk takers ultimately succeed, but exactly by the numbers that a typical venture capitalist goes through. They get 200 to 500 plans a year. They take 2% of those, maybe 10 of those actually work, 2 of those actually succeed, and those are the ones that everybody hears about. Nobody hears about all the other failures, but if you don't try, you'll never, ever get there. And you can't just buy it when it happens. That's not going to cut it anymore. So if you're willing to take those risks, then you're willing to get the rewards, and it's worth it. And so venture labs or corporate labs or entrepreneurs in residence or designers in residence, those are the people who are willing to take the risks and get fired for it. And, you know, that's why you do it. But your firm benefits.
To what extent do you think retailers should be at the cutting edge of developing these new innovative ideas, new technologies? I mean, they work with a whole raft of partners. That's how retail works. So should they put expectation more on their partners?
Do you consider Amazon retail?
Yeah, I do.
Amazon has drones in Africa. They deliver packages in Africa. They have a whole network of drone systems, communications, deliveries, drop-offs. Do you know about this? Are you going to use it? Could you use it? So, I don't know. I mean, do you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. It is interesting, though, because I was talking to a similar group of people, but in Unilever, and talking about some of the examples of the innovations that we've played with and gone out there. And, of course, quite rightly, some of them, we had to close down, as you'd expect. And it was really interesting. The first couple of comments from the audience in these normal corporate people was, but you failed. And I was like, well, no, we were experimenting with the business model. We experimented. We got an enormous amount of learning that particular thing that we thought might work or it might not, we found out that it didn't work. And isn't it amazing that we didn't bet the entire company on doing this? We experimented in this small skunk works kind of way, and we wrapped it up. That's a success. And you could just see that kind of slight confusion of, but it didn't work. You failed. And I think that's you really have to overcome that there's, and using words like skunk works, venture lab, you create a space, you create permission where failure is actually expected, and therefore the handcuffs come off and creativity can really be embraced.
Yeah, because last time I checked, I mean, maybe there's one person or 2 people in the room that have an arranged marriage, but I guarantee you that a lot of people in this room that are married had a whole bunch of failures before they got married to make sure that was the one they wanted to marry. So at the end of the day, you say on one hand, oh no, I would never do that. And then the other hand, you're like, oh, but of course. So, and designers go through this all the time in the number of prototypes that we make and the number of things that fail. I mean, failure is part of the whole thing unless you are very comfortable with learning. And if you're learning, it's not a failure. It's just a step along the way to find, your polar bear wife that you had to trek 14 miles and fight off 10 different other polar bears for, bloody and stumpy, and oh my God, I found them. That's the way it has to go.
Thinking about in the retail space, and in your experience, what drives change to come up with new ideas, new products? I mean, is it thinking about the consumer at the heart of that, or you called it the sci-fi stuff? It feels like the Minority Report approach, that it's a bunch of guys.
What about Alessi, right? Alessi is a great example of that. Alberto Alessi is a really nice guy. I've had many conversations with him, and he tries and tries and tries and fails all the time. But look at the stuff Alessi puts out. Now they have tiny little retail stores, and they're not the massive John Lewis or But I mean, look at the stuff that they do. They make really exciting tiny little things and they've been in business for hundreds of years, and it's great. So it works for some, and you have to embed that sort of design thinking and that Italian mentality just to pump by the country for a couple seconds. I mean, you have to try that stuff.
Yeah.
I think retail is quite an interesting space because you want people to buy. So you want to create an environment where a deal is closed. And as we learn more and more of the psychology of buying, and you understand the drivers that make people eventually take that decision to sort of say yes, you've got a lot more information to optimize the environment in which that purchase point is curated. And you initiate that conversation right from outside, walking into the store, as you know, parking on one side, the online presence, because online you can do a lot of cool, funky stuff, because the journey before they got to your store should tell you exactly what they want before they've even entered your portal. So you should know that there are, you know, maybe a stay-at-home mum or a working mum with X number of kids, with a husband that's 4, 5, 6 years older or 2, 3 years younger. You should know that she's into climbing. You should know she's
Amazon and Google know everything already about.
Yeah, so you know, you as a store owner should know your customer like that. You know, you should know that when they enter your store, that the likely thing is that she last bought, I don't know, widget X, and it has a lifetime of 2.5 years. It's about to expire, therefore offer it up to her. You know, you should be able to customize her experience in the most extraordinary way. But it's a little bit about that. There's a sort of level of spookiness there that you don't want to step over. So,
but which now everybody has clearly stepped completely over.
Exactly.
I mean, spooky is you accept spooky without any problem.
Well, I think.
I mean, do you know how much your phone knows already?
I know. So you have to manage the spooky factor. But at the same time, you want that place to feel like home. And I think you've got an amazing set of tools now to understand how stressed that person is coming in. So even the colors on your website, you can do lots of emotive, you can do lots of psychological priming to de-stress that purchase process, and make it a place where people want to reside. It's welcoming. You feel happy, you feel secure, you feel like you're in a trusted space. So trusted people know stuff about you versus stalker scary person.
Look at the success stories, right? You got Muji in Japan, an incredible design aesthetic. Their products are amazing, they're inexpensive, and everybody buys them from all over the world. Corso Como Dieci in Milan. If you go to Milan, you go to Corso Como Dieci because it is the place where you find the most amazing stuff, period, end of story. Colette in Paris, Swarovski stores all over the world. I mean, they've cultivated a culture of design and technology in a comfortable place where you say, I've got to have it. But you don't even know why you got to have it. And who cares? Designers are happy, producers are happy, retailers are happy, everybody's happy. They've spent an incredible amount of time cooking up that cake. And that cake just doesn't come from technology. It doesn't come from just design. It doesn't come from just retail. It comes from a very clear failure over and over and over until they get it right. And they try and they succeed, and that's why they are world leaders.
Come back to your point, you called it the spooky world. I mean, so my son, 20-year-old son, is a real conspiracy theorist and said, Dad, you've got to watch for Google, Amazon, Apple, they know everything about you. And thanks to you, Greg, I now know he's right. But in that scary world, to Guy's point earlier this morning, if you heard his presentation, you know, that you kind of got to watch for people suddenly thinking, you know, hang on, this brand or this...
That's called marketing. That's completely outside of everything we're talking about here. I mean, ultimately, I tend to be more black and white as a person, but the reality is if you're making your customers feel like they're safe, for the love of God, they're safe. But if you knew what was happening on the back end inside Google related to your phones, you would not even want to know.
Yeah.
So don't call it a conspiracy. Just, you know, go Google and find out yourself. It'll take you about a week. If you keep looking every day for a week about the way your Android phone works, you'll find out stuff that you just don't want to know. But that's of benefit to retailers because then they get to know, and then they get to do their job better.
Yeah, yeah. So, would anyone like to ask a question here at the very front? We've got a microphone.
It's a very exciting world in the next few years from what you say, but the thing that is wholly unexciting for me is I think most people, if not everybody's very busy in this room, and they hate queuing. And when you go to the shops, you have to queue. So, is that being looked at? And how long will it be in the future where I do not have to queue for 15 minutes to buy an item?
don't look at me. Look, all I can say is Brits love to queue. Man, you go to Italy, there aren't queues. You go to Spain, they just, I don't know how they do it. They just get through, you know, it's like an elbow race. Everybody's in and out, and it's like, you know, and it's fun, right? So maybe you should stop thinking about, you know, I don't want to queue, and try to figure out, make queuing more fun. If you're sitting there and you're saying, wow, I've been here for 20 minutes, I've listened to this guy talk for 20 minutes, this is the most boring talk I've ever had, then you're not having any fun. But if you didn't notice that this conversation went by in 3 seconds, then you had fun, and that's what some retailers are able to do. You go into Corso Come Dieci in Milan, you will lose hours. There's no queue because you're there to have fun. If I have to buy groceries in Sainsbury's, the truth is I'm in and out pretty quick. What is long? What is I'm not having fun? Ask yourself different questions.
And also, you also have to think about what kind of person is in the store, what is the item that they need to get in store that they haven't got online and haven't delivered to themselves online.
Yeah, you got smart refrigerators now that'll deliver things via drone. You won't have to even go outside your house sooner or later.
So, yeah.
We have a couple more questions down here. Oh, mic from there.
Now, starting after lunch, you might get people indigestion, which is a health and safety issue, but that's a different story.
Especially when you're playing Zeppelin.
But my question is more related to people like Unilever and Lisa here, in big companies with boards of directors who still write out checks and stuff like that. How do you convince the top management? Maybe might be an easy thing, but then also the board, ultimately, if the investment is big enough or the potential loss of short-term revenue is big enough, to get them to totally support this type of activity, which I think is not questions per se intelligently, but from an intellectual point of view, but then to really be behind it, because that's the only way you create long-term success, I think.
I think the case for innovation, I think, can be made very, very strongly in any industry. So I think you're in a clear win there. I think where it's difficult is translating that into a model that works for your corporate. So in Unilever, we've got a number of different innovation models on the go at the same time. So I'm in the venture group. We play as a very strict venture capital house. And so we're seen as a little bit like the evil capitalists by our fellow corporate people, because we ask very, very hard questions about whether the company we're looking at has it got the skill, blah, 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 all the venture questions about whether the actual company will start. But what we've also got is we've got now an open innovation network across the world, where we have leaders in every area that we think is quite exciting and interesting. And they have a budget and a remit to do all the skunk work programs. So, and
which the board approves because,
yes.
Yeah, you go in there with that.
And so what's interesting is we've got a lovely relationship now with our OI skunk work partners, because we are then the natural recipient. If they find something that they think is super exciting, Unilever has a number of different things. Unilever can acquire the company. And now most of the huge big innovators in the space are tiny startups, and as we all know, corporates can't handle owning startups. So the natural acquirer of a startup is to sit it inside us, because we can incubate it, look after it, make sure it grows properly.
Intrapreneuring.
Entrepreneur. Yeah.
If the board has the remit for intrapreneuring, and they see the value of intrapreneuring, then they will do an innovation pipeline, which is then fed, the pipe goes directly to the venture labs.